Welcome to the Insights and Innovators podcast from Market Research Institute International, where top research professionals share practical insights and innovation strategies to help researchers deliver more business impact and earn their strategic seat at the table. Today's episode is sponsored by Fieldwork. Fieldwork is the qualitative research partner that recruits respondents according to client specs and hosts in-person, remote, or hybrid research sessions to uncover insights for brand and business impact. Whether in our state-of-the-art facilities or online, clients can focus on the research. We'll do the rest. Now here's your host for today's episode.
One common trait among the next generation of market research industry leaders is an enlightened and empathetic perspective for the communities that they serve. Recognized as one of the industry's 30 under 30, Claire Kuhn, SVP of Research and Insights at OvationMR, reflects on her career path and the journey to follow. I'm John Lass, President of Sports and Leisure Research Group and past President of MRII. In this episode, we're going to spotlight one of the dynamic young voices in market research. As SVP of Research and Insights at OvationMR, Claire Kuhn brings her own brand of Midwestern kindness and empathy-driven leadership to the research team, and she personifies the professional and human qualities that embody the next generation of industry leadership. Claire, it's great to have you on Insights and Innovators.
Thanks so much for having me here today. I'm really excited for the chance to chat with you.
You know, it's funny when we talk about the research industry and how we kind of go on our respective career paths. For many of us, like myself, research kind of finds us instead of us finding research. And, rather than taking a directed and intentioned path, I'm curious from your, vantage point, share with us what drove you into the industry and what specifically were the motivations that kind of brought you on the path you're on. I'd love to get an overview of your career journey to date as well as your present role.
Yeah, so I'm one of the odd ones where I actually did take a direct intentional path into market research. My senior year of high school, I was interning at an event planning company. That's what I thought I wanted to go to college for and be an event planner. Obviously, that path didn't happen, but I was chatting with my mentor at that job about what I wanted to major in when I went to Michigan State. And I was really conflicted between studying business and psychology because I really wanted to learn business fundamentals. I saw myself having some sort of career in business, but I was also really about fascinated on people, how people make decisions, just things like that. So after a few conversations with her, she was like, "Hey, early on in my career, I worked in market research. That's sort of something that seems like it very much marries your two interests and might be a good path for you." So I set out intentionally pursuing that path, got a degree in marketing, and then I was lucky enough that while I was an undergrad at Michigan State, they came out with their Masters of Science in Market Research and Analytics program. So I was able to just roll right into that and launch my career.
Fantastic. That is kind of, at least back in the day when I was cutting my teeth, the oddity. So it's good to see that
Yeah.
that's kind of a direction that people are heading through. Certainly what one learns in school, and I certainly can think back to going to graduate school and coming out of graduate school and thinking everybody was going to behave the way that we did in our case studies. So you get some surprises when you start out. And I'm curious, what was it when you first actually started working in the industry after school that was kind of an expectation that was proven wrong?
I think I was really surprised at how truly hands-on research is. As you mentioned, like it's the real world is not like the case studies you study. So it was just things like doing more immersive qualitative research where you're actually like in someone's home speaking to them versus just doing things online. It was things like managing iHuts where you have to empty out the bottles of returned product when they come back to you because it's a proprietary blend of something. So I was really pleasantly surprised by how much more of a true human to human aspect there was.
Yeah, it's kind of fun to, really, as I say, one of the great values of being in the research profession is I always talk about how it's kind of discovering truth, but it's also giving you a vantage point into things that may be foreign or different from your own daily existence. I guess we're both New Yorkers now,
Mhm.
and it's so easy to get caught in one's own silo, and research kind of opens the door to what else is going on around you that's so far and distant, perhaps, from what one studied. That in its own right is kind of a motivator for me. I'm curious about what aspects of your role and what research has meant for you. What energizes you? What is it that really kind of inspires you and gets you excited to kind of hit the ground running each day?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I always tell my team, and I'm transparent with this about my clients, my favorite part of the research process is reporting. I love being able to bring those human truths and insights to life. It's really empowering knowing that you're the person who's reading through quotes, you're looking at data, you're understanding what people want to convey, and then you're the one that sort of gets to tell that story for them. And I just absolutely love that.
You mentioned storytelling, which is such a popular term, but one that I share that same passion for and that same recognition that that's really what we've become. Without divulging anything that was, proprietary, have there been some really interesting stories that have come out of work that surprised you as well?
So actually there was one yesterday, and I was looking at some open-ended data, and Ovation has a really cool open-end AI probing tool called Quality OE that gives each respondent a customized follow-up. So I'm reading through these open ends, checking for quality, and there's a person who for the initial question just gave a one-word nope response. And then he was given a follow-up probe, and all of a sudden, there was 3 to 5 sentences all about his divorce, what was currently going on in his life, his struggles. And I just thought it was so amazing how research coming at him from the right angle was able to empower him to open up and share a lot more than he clearly initially wanted to.
Yeah, the context is so important, when thinking about qualitative research, which is so important to our firm as well. I often tell a story. I'm not going to get it into it in total detail, but there was always this big question in one of the sectors that we worked at as to what were inhibitors about people engaging more. And
Mhm.
you kind of work at it and work at it, and then out of nowhere you get somebody to really kind of open up. It's just one of those what I call 2% moments. What would remain in
Yeah.
your life if they made a movie about it? And you mentioned AI, and you kind of hit a nice gap bridge between the automated component as well as the personal component of
Mhm.
qualitative research. But more broadly, when we talk about insights going through transformational change, obviously technology plays a huge role into that. Do you buy into that overall premise that the industry is having transformational change? And if so, where does it need to continue to evolve?
Yeah, absolutely. I fully believe the industry is undergoing a transformation. I think where it needs to evolve is a little bit more of that human element. Everyone's so excited about AI, what AI can do for the profession, how it can make our jobs easier, how it can empower us to access and analyze larger sets of data. But AI is only as smart and powerful as the human who's writing the prompts, giving it. And I think folks just really need to focus in on the value that they add to bringing AI into the process, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I think it's an interesting perspective, and we talk a lot about just this battle between high tech and high touch. And
Mhm.
as somebody that's been at it for a while, I never want to see one lose that high touch. It sounds like you've kind of taken a pretty enlightened perspective on how the two, what seem to be opposites, can kind of work well together.
No, and I agree. Like just that high touch approach is so important and not losing sight of that. Similarly to the point you made earlier about how the rest of the world and consumers are not like New York City. You need to always be open and understanding what else is out there.
Yeah, and I don't want to bash New York. It's been my home for a long time, but it's a different place. And in lockstep with this whole industry evolution, when we think about the end product and the methodological emphasis, as someone who's been a relatively younger industry professional, you have a different vantage point. And I want to talk a little bit about that vantage point on the leadership side, because
Mhm.
obviously you manage people and it's something you've been able to accomplish
Mhm.
relatively earlier in your career. When you think about culture and the whole aspect of leadership, what does, today's emerging generation of leaders need to focus on? Those of us who came before you put probably less emphasis on certain things, and now today it's maybe a little bit different than it was 20 years ago. What advice or recommendations would you have from a leadership perspective?
Yeah, I would say authenticity. The generation of folks that I'll be managing and so on is a completely different breed of employee than what we've traditionally seen. They entered the workforce during COVID. They're a lot more digital first, and I think being able to connect with them in an authentic way and being a transparent and open leader is really important. And I'm thankful that that's the type of leadership I do see modeled for me every day. And it would be great to see more people sort of jumping on that board.
Yeah, no, it's something that I've witnessed as obviously younger people have come into our firm, and I guess the follow-up question to that would be, we think about being there to support our teams and be their friends, but then there's another school of thought that says, well, there's got to be a little bit of a dividing line
Oh,
because
mhm.
ultimately you're responsible to manage them. Is that a challenge? And if so, how do you get there?
I don't find that a challenge. What's actually really interesting is the younger employees are a lot better at setting that boundary. They're very much into the work-life balance. My day ends at a certain time. I'm not taking work home with me. So I don't find that to be a challenge at all.
And that doesn't frustrate you at all?
Um, no, I think it's a very healthy boundary and a lot of folks could learn a lot from that.
Yeah, no, I'm probably one of them because I'm still one of these guys that just like is just constantly grinding, and I have to kind of sometimes hold myself back and recognize that there is a bit of separation. It's funny because a lot of our research has talked about this emphasis on work-life balance. Uh,
Mhm.
with that said, for those who are entering the industry today, what are the most critical skills that you feel are needed? And again, how do you kind of refine those skills as a manager?
Yeah, I think just generally the soft skill of being humble, what a lot of the beginning of a research career is really repeating and repeating and repeating the foundations of research, where you're super in the weeds, you're super into a lot of the technical things, but doing that and building that up is so necessary to give you the foundation you need to succeed as a leader. You need to understand the ins and outs of every aspect that goes into both qualitative and quantitative research. So I think just having that patience and understanding and realizing that the mastery early on will really, really help you out.
So it's a mix of those soft skills as well as not being afraid to roll up your sleeves and share those challenges together with the team.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just always raising your hand for new opportunities, because that's how you're going to learn, that's how you're going to grow, that's how you're going to slowly but surely get exposed to more complex and impactful tasks.
I'm curious if you have any opinions on, you talk about a certain culture or a certain empathy and attitude that people need to have, and I buy that. But then
Mhm.
there's the technical side, the actual research piece, and you obviously learned that in school. Some people coming into research may not have that grounding. Does that put them at a disadvantage, or do you think that those can be taught on the job too?
I definitely think they can be taught and learned on the job. I mean, coming in with like specific research training definitely gives you an edge, but those practical skills are something that can always be learned. And what I think is so great about the research profession is there are so many wonderful mentors in this community that make transferring those skills onto folks coming in a little bit more green pretty seamless.
Yeah, is one more important than the other in terms of the technical side versus the cultural side? Do you have an opinion on that?
Um, In terms of like the skills that somebody's bringing.
Yeah, like if you're hiring somebody, I mean, this is, this again is a really good topic that I've debated with a number of our colleagues. So, like, when
Yeah.
we're looking for somebody, are we more somebody in the beginning of their career, obviously, are we more favorable towards someone who has the formal training, or do we feel that if they're a good fit culturally for what we're doing, we can get them skilled up into that area?
Gotcha. I would say culturally, because research is an industry that especially benefits from having folks with diverse skill sets, diverse sets of training. So just because somebody doesn't have that strong research pedigree doesn't mean that they don't have a unique and valuable perspective to bring to a team. And I think that just adds more depth to, yeah, what a team can offer.
No, I agree. I just wanted to get your standpoint. I've always said that somebody who has the right fit,
Hmm.
both in terms of culture, in terms of a desire to be successful, to learn, to go forward, to upskill, we can teach them the technical side. Like you said, it's great if they have that, but at the same point, if they have the other characteristics and that energy, that becomes even more important. As we get towards the end of the time we have together on this episode, I'm curious about, you spoke earlier about how the industry needs to evolve. If you could jump ahead 20 years and gaze into that proverbial crystal ball, what's the industry going to look like then? How different is it going to be to today?
So I don't think it's going to be radically different. I mean, just even thinking about looking back 20 years, 30 years, and yes, things have changed in terms of technology, in terms of how we conduct research, but the fundamentals remain largely the same. Um, I think it'll be interesting to see how the industry continues to foster engagement among our respondents as time moves on and as people become more concerned about things like data privacy, sharing opinions, things like that. So I think we're going to have to get more creative about connecting with the humans that are vital to the heartbeat of our industry.
Right, I agree. Another great observation. We'll be interested to see how that unfolds. Just to wrap up, any other closing thoughts that you may have that research professionals entering the profession can think about to enable them to play a stronger role, not only within their own organizations, but if they're on the agency side, like we are, in driving innovation and transformation for their clients?
Yeah, I think it's always staying curious and always learning. There's so many great resources out there in the industry that are always putting out new content. And I think that staying up to date and on the cusp of what's going on allows you to be more informed, which allows your clients to make more informed decisions about the amazing options they have out there to conduct research.
No, it's like Ted Lasso said, for those who remember, always be curious. That was one of my
Yeah.
favorite in the dart scene for those who remember that. Thank you so much, Claire. It's been great chatting with you. I wish we could chat longer, but obviously keeping these within a certain time parameter. I want to thank you again for sharing your vision and being a part of our Insights and Innovators series.
Yeah, thank you again for having me. This was so much fun.
Thanks for joining the Insights and Innovators podcast from Market Research Institute International. Click subscribe to never miss an episode and visit us at mrii.org for more market research insights.